yeah, let's get started. I'll first start with a quick introduction about myself. I'm Digvijay Gagneja, Chief Operating Officer at Leverage Edu. Leverage Edu is India's most trusted university admission services company. And we've helped thousands of students get to their dream universities abroad across more than tens of countries. I personally have myself coached about hundreds of students who are now studying abroad. And I also have an experience of studying in India as well as abroad. So I've done my engineering at IIT Kharagpur and my MBA at ISB. And alongside that, I have also studied at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business for a semester abroad in the US with my MBA. And I've also done a research fellowship at State University of New York at Buffalo, again in the US. I've also been very closely associated with a lot of universities in the UK and working very, very closely with them. And apart from that, I've also worked at multiple companies, including McKinsey & Company, which is the world's largest management consulting company. And as a part of that, I have myself worked in the UK and Philippines as well for short durations. So yeah, today's topic between UK and USA, the study opportunities, is very, very close to my heart. I've studied myself in the US, and I'm now very, very closely working with universities in the UK. I've also worked in the UK. So kind of have a flavor of both the markets through personal experiences as well. And hence today's session, I want to bring alive on what are the key differentiators between these two countries and the study opportunities in these two countries, right? So let's get started. So between US and UK, right? Let's look at US. US, the good thing is the world's highest ranked universities are there, right? In the US. So it's sort of a generalization. It's not like UK does not have highly ranked universities, but if you were to look at it in percentage basis, yeah, a much higher percentage of highly ranked universities are in the US versus the UK. So yeah, from an academic excellence perspective, maybe US has higher number of top ranked universities, right? Then in the US, there is also a lot of flexibility on how you want to do your courses. So albeit mostly UG course would be 4 years and a PG course would be 2 years of duration. You can actually, if you're a smart student and you can probably take a lot more credits upfront and complete those degrees in like 3.5 years and 1.5 years as well. I have friends who've done their bachelor's in even 3 years instead of 4 years by taking a lot of those academic credits upfront. So yeah, there is a lot of flexibility in how you do your courses in the US. Also, you choose your specialization a lot later, probably after 1.5, even 2 years of studying for a bachelor's. So you get a flavor of a lot of different subjects before you also specialize. So a lot of flexibility in the US. Now let me sort of quickly flip sides to the UK. Although the most number of highest ranked universities are not there, but again, they do have the likes of Oxford and Cambridge, the Oxbridge as you call them, and a lot of other colleges, University College London, King's College London, Imperial College London and the like, right? So also, which are again, very top ranked universities. And the good thing about UK universities is that most of them are public universities, right? Whereas in the US, most of them are private universities. So the difference is when you have public universities, they have a very, very sort of strong legacy, right? If you think about these universities, most of the public universities in the UK are at least 50 to 60 years old, if not hundreds of years old, right? There are quite a few that are even more than 100 years old. So they have a very, very strong legacy. Since they are public universities, they're slightly cheaper. They have student welfare in mind. They have the world's best sort of lab infrastructure and other facilities, infrastructure that is available there at a cheaper price. So if I were to say it, if you want to get that Harry Potter castle feel of while you're studying in your university, you're going to get a lot of that in UK universities. It'll be fewer in the US universities. Most of them are quite more sort of modern than being this legacy hundreds of years of old universities, barring a few, right? So yeah, so again, recapping, US, very highly ranked universities generally, and they have more flexibility. UK, most of them are public universities and have got very, very solid infrastructure. And I mean, if I were to give you a corollary to that, if you look at in India, If you look at engineering institutes and you look at IITs, they're again public universities and have got really solid infrastructure in terms of labs, in terms of sports facilities, in terms of any other facilities, because they're public universities, right? It's very similar in the UK as well. The public universities give you a lot of good infrastructure. The other good thing about UK universities is while US might have flexibility in the way you do programs, UK programs are already very short, in their duration. So if a US program, typically bachelor's program is 4 years, a UK bachelor's program is just about 3 years. If a US master's program is 2 years, a UK master's program is 1 year, right? So they're already shorter. So you don't really need the flexibility. You're already sort of spending 1 year less in your education. And hence there are a lot of other repercussions of it in terms of how much you invest in your education. So from total tuition fee that you would pay and total upfront investment that you would do would be lower in the UK versus, and also the opportunity cost of not having to study and not having to earn salary for an extra year is also very, very significant, right? So yeah, that's again sort of a difference between the US and the UK. So yeah, that's sort of bigger differences between how UK and US international study opportunities work. Let's quickly sort of switch gears on how you view job opportunities, right, between the two countries. So US is, if you're one who's sort of heard of the great American dream, right, of going and making it big in the US. So US offers you that. Whereas if you look at UK, it's about your choice of making your career in the Britland where the sun would never set at one point of time, right? So both are great places to make your careers in. So US has had the advantage of being very, very sort of capitalistic in its nature and being growing really rapidly over the last few decades, as a result of which most of the biggest companies have come out from the US, be it Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. Most of their headquarters are there. If you look at even the number of cities where you would want to probably be, right, you would have also heard of them in the US, would be the likes of New York City or Boston on the East Coast, the likes of San Francisco or Los Angeles on the West Coast, having Chicago somewhere in Midwest, having other cities like Miami, Houston, Atlanta, and the likes, right? Again, cities you would have heard of, cities which are offer very good opportunities for work. Now, when you sort of compare this to the UK, UK, obviously London is the financial capital, and it's a great and it's a wonderful city to be in. But when you compare London to all the other cities in the UK that are larger, they may not compare similar to say a NYC and a Boston and a Chicago and a San Francisco, Los Angeles. So in US you have a lot of sort of choice in number of cities you want to be. In the UK you would be sort of limited to cities like a London or a Liverpool or a Bristol or a Glasgow and the likes, right? So it's that is one difference, right? So if you see US does offer you a lot of access to the top companies in the world. Having said that, things have changed a lot over the last couple of years in the UK. The UK underwent something called as Brexit that most of you would have obviously heard of. So what happened as a result is a bunch of about 1.6 million people left the UK, and UK essentially is now trying to get a lot of international students in and trying to accelerate their economy. And as a result, UK has announced their 2 years post-study work visa. What that means is now, just like the US, they give you, rather better than the US, 2 years of post-study work visa. So once you complete your education, be it bachelor's or postgrad, you will get 2 years to stay in the UK. And of course, you can, in that time, you would get absorbed in one of the great companies out there. There is a lot of demand, a lot of economic opportunity in the UK at the moment. And hence, after those 2 years, you can get to a 3-year post-study, 3-year work visa, followed by which you are open to getting a permanent residency in the UK, right? So UK actually has made it a lot simpler than the US currently to be there, get a job, and get a path to PR than US at the moment, right? I think I would just want to touch upon a bit on lifestyle, right? If you are someone who's been in India all along, you would realize that UK is very, very similar to how India operates. And that's because most of the systems in India have sort of taken their inspiration from the UK, of course, because the Brits were here when the systems in India were getting formed, be it our driving systems, be it our our railways, be it like the overall culture, how government machinery works. Versus when you look at the US, it's almost everything is opposite. You're driving on the right side of the road. The way people operate, the way systems operate are very, very new, right? So for someone who's going to the US would actually face a much bigger culture shock than someone who's been who goes to UK from India, right? So if you go to UK, you will get sort of a very homely feel in terms of you would be somehow knowing a little bit about the systems. It won't be that big a shift versus when you go to the US, you realize that a lot of things change, right? Even simple things like when you go and open a bank account, and you'll be like, okay, what's a checking account versus we call it a current account, and the things just work very, very differently, right? Even for you to get a driver's license, people who drive, US typically does not work on public transport, right? In the US, it's a lot more about being there, having your car and being able to drive your car around for all the basic necessities as an economy built on driving versus the UK, wherein public transport, railways, metros, tubes are something that's the way of life, and not everyone would essentially even have cars there, right? And you won't have to probably drive cars to get your basic necessities in life. So those are some lifestyle differences between the US and the UK. Also, touching a bit about the salaries that you get in the UK versus the US. If you think about it, see, US is a little more capitalistic. Your growth path is slightly better, and you earn a little more salary as well, right? So if you look at how UK operates, US operates, you would be as a bachelor's making somewhere between 60 to 75, $80,000 per annum. Whereas as you graduate as a bachelor in the UK, you would be making somewhere around 30,000 to 65,000 pounds, right? Depending on where you've graduated from. And as a result of that, you would realize that US would probably always be paying in real value a little more than the UK. But at the same time, US does not offer any healthcare infrastructure. You have to pay for your insurance. You have to ensure you pay for your healthcare. You have to fend a lot for yourself. Versus the UK, a lot of the basic necessities are taken care of. So you would never have to spend a penny on healthcare, for example, right? You can just walk into any of the NHS doctors and essentially get yourself treated free of charge. And hence the government also taxes you a little more, and hence the salaries are a little low, right? So that those are bigger sort of differences in lifestyle as well between the US and the UK. And that's primarily a difference between how the systems function, right? So US is a little more capitalistic versus UK is a little more sort of socialistic in the way they give benefits to their citizens and students, right? So yeah, that's a little bit on the lifestyle bit. If you look at cost element, right, of studying in the UK versus the US. So what happens is, I've already covered a point around how UK universities are mostly public universities, whereas US universities are a lot, most of them are private universities. So even if you talk about, say, the top ranked schools, Ivy Leagues, right? When you talk about Ivy Leagues are nothing but they're private universities. The good thing about Ivy Leagues is that they have they're really high on academic excellence. They charge you a lot, but they also promise you a better salary, right? So that's the big difference. So you would find that private universities would be charging higher. They would be smaller in the size of the class. They would also have a lower acceptance rate, because for these private universities, you would find a lot more competition. And at the same time, these private universities would be also sort of, focused a lot more on extracurricular activities than just the academic part of it. In the US, again, you do have public universities as well that will be slightly cheaper. For example, I went to a public university called State University of New York at Buffalo. Those universities would be cheaper, probably at par in terms of tuition fee with a UK university. But again, in terms of, most of the public universities are lower ranked than the private universities that generally occupy the top ranked positions in the US, right? Versus when you, so Ivy Leagues, all of the Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Pennsylvania, Cornell, Brown, Dartmouth, all of them are private universities. Versus when you now look at UK, all of the top ranked universities are public universities over there. So they have a set of universities called Russell Group of Universities, which is similar to Ivy League universities. And there are about 24 Russell Group of universities, all public universities, right? And what that means is that their fee vis-a-vis a US university, which is of a similar stature, is much lower, right? So you would essentially end up paying lower fee. You would also end up getting the same level of infrastructure, if not better, in that UK public university, right? So if you were to look at an Oxford or a Cambridge or any of the other slightly lower ranked as well, say a Sheffield or a Bristol or a Liverpool or a Queen Mary University of London or an Essex or a Brunel or or say a University of East Anglia, University of Central Lancashire. I'm sort of covering the entire depth, right? I'm telling you that all of these universities are public universities. They're not private universities. So hence, their fee would always be of a similar ranked university in the US much lower, right? So your fee for 1 year academic tuition could be from as low as say about 8 to 10,000 pounds per annum, which is about 8 to 10 lakhs per annum in the UK, going up to say about 30,000 pounds as well, which is about 25 to 30 lakhs per annum in the UK, right? Even if you go to the best program out there, say you were to probably hit a Manchester or a Oxford, Cambridge and the likes, even then you'd be paying somewhere around 45,000 to 50,000 pounds a year, right? Now if you similarly switch gears and go to a similar ranked university there, then 8 to 10,000 pounds, it's like 8 to 10 lakh rupee annual tuition fee would be unheard of in the US, right? You would end up paying bare minimum somewhere around 15 lakh rupees even to the lower ranked universities in terms of your tuition fee. That would be somewhere around 20,000 US dollars at the bare minimum per annum. Plus, you have to have a 2-year program. So if you're going for masters, it'll be a 2-year masters, which would mean that your overall tuition fee would cost somewhere around 40 lakh rupees versus in a UK wherein you'd study for 1 year, your masters, and it would be approximately less than half the amount that you'll be paying for a similar ranked university, right? If you go to the top ranked university in the US, it's going to be easily somewhere around 100,000, about $60,000, $70,000 per year. But the problem is you'll pay it for 2 years for your masters and 4 years for your bachelor's versus 1 year in the UK and for masters and 3 years in the UK for bachelor's. So yeah, broadly, and I think at the root of it, the reason for that is the UK has a lot more public universities and US is governed by a lot more private universities, right? Having said that, again, you pay a little more in the US, you get paid back also in terms of his salaries a lot more in the US. But your salaries are higher in the US versus UK, but you also end up paying a lot more in your overall health insurance and a lot of other ancillary costs that you won't have to pay in the UK because they are taken care for by the government, right? What else? In terms of admissions, right? So next topic is how do they differ in terms of admissions? So, between say the US and the UK, you would realize that UK is a lot more objective in how they assess admission applicants versus US, which is very slightly more holistic in their approach of assessing applicants. So the difference is, say, if you want to get into a UK university, your biggest emphasis would be on the basic eligibility criteria to say whether you have scored a minimum of 2.5 GPA or 3 GPA, about 65%, 70% marks in your, say, undergraduate, right? And whether you have scored an IELTS, which is above 6.5 or 7 at the bare minimum, right? And as a result of which, you're like 80% of your evaluation is done. There is very little sort of emphasis on the statement of purpose or the letter of recommendation, right? It is about 10, 15, 20% of the application, not a whole lot. Whereas if you go to the US, right? In the US, there will be a lot more emphasis on your extracurriculars, your letter of recommendations, your essays, and your GMAT or GRE score. So most of the universities, about 70%, 80% of the universities there would ask you to give your GRE or a GMAT for your master's program or an SAT program, SAT or ACT for your bachelor's program. Versus in the UK, those are not required in majority of the universities. In the UK, all you need is ensure that you have a GPA of 2.5 plus, and you've given your IELTS. And in many cases in the UK, even an IELTS is waived off if, say, in your class 12th in your English subject you scored more than a certain mark, right? So most universities ask you if you've given your exam in CBSE or ICSE, if you've scored more than 65 or 70% in your class 12th in English, then you don't even need to give an IELTS examination. You can literally just enroll into the program with just your UG transcript in your mark sheets and your class 12th English certificate. And that's it, like 80-85% is done there. All you need, and your SOP, your statement of purpose and LOR do not account for a larger percentage, right, in your evaluation. So yeah, bigger takeaway, US is a little more holistic in the way they evaluate applications, which is good for students who probably not scored well and want to overcome their lower score by talking a lot more about the work they've done on extracurriculars, on community service, worked with NGOs, done work and have really solid letters of recommendation from great folks, or can justify and write really good essays. They will get a lot more weightage in the US versus in the UK. There'll be a lot more weightage on your objective parameters of how much you've done, how well have you scored in your undergraduate, where have you done your undergraduate from, and your IELTS examination. In most scenarios, you don't even need a GRE GMAT score in the UK. Just the last part now in terms of part-time work opportunities while you're studying in the US, UK, plus your visa and path to PR in the US, UK, right? That'll be my last topic for tonight on how do we differentiate the study opportunities between these two countries. So if you look at US, you get to work for about 20 hours per week. And similarly in the UK as well, you get to do part-time work for about 20 hours per week, right? So it's very similar. Even the wages generally range between $7 to $12 per hour versus about 8 to 15 pounds per hour. So from the perspective of your spending capacity and earning capacity, is broadly similar. The only difference is US, you most likely are forced to work only on campus. You can't work off campus part-time, whereas the UK allows you to work off campus as well in your part-time work opportunities, right? Yeah. In terms of your your salaries, I've already covered that a bit. So in terms of your salaries in the UK, I've already covered UK versus US. After you graduate, your salaries would be somewhere between, for a UG would be $60,000 to $80,000 versus UK would be somewhere around 30,000 pounds to about 60,000 pounds, depending on where you've graduated. Again, as a postgraduate in the US, you would make $70,000 to $85,000 versus UK, it will be somewhere between 25,000 pounds to 45,000 pounds. So UK will be slightly depressed in your salary, but you also get taken care of in terms of any sort of health benefits and other benefits that you get from the government versus in the US, where there are not such any benefits. Also in terms of UK versus US, the systems are very, very different. You end up not owning a car. You end up not having a lot of those expenses that you have in the US, right? So in the UK, you would be relying a lot on public infrastructure, trains, buses, and the likes, versus the US, wherein most likely you would have to own a car. You have to drive around everywhere because that's just how US works, right? Now, last point in terms of visa, right? And what is your path to PR? So I've touched a little bit on it, but let me go deeper. So in the UK now, you get 2 years post-study work visa, versus in the US, you get 1 year's OPT, right? So what's the difference? Say you complete your master's program in the UK versus your master's program in the US. So this is how the picture will look. So you do your master's program in the UK, which is 1 year. After that 1 year master's program, you would get 2 years post-study work visa. So after graduating 1 year, you get visa for 2 years. In those 2 years, essentially, you need to get a job. You need to be earning bare minimum somewhere around 25,000 pounds or more per annum. And at that salary, at the end of your 2 years, that is at the end of 2 years post-study work visa, your company can sponsor you for a work visa. That work visa will again keep getting renewed, and you can get that work visa for about 5 years. At the end of 5 years is where you can apply for a PR, right? You can do that probably earlier as well. The UK Home Office regulations are yet to be announced, wherein they are going to set up points-based PR system similar to Canada and Australia, making it easier for folks who have spent enough time in the UK to get a PR. So this time might even reduce, right? So, but for now, the way it is, 1 year MBA, 1 year master's. After that, 2 years of post-study work. After that, get about your work visa for about 4 to 5 years. After that, you are PR. right? Now let's look at the US. So the US, how it works is, say you do your master's in 2 years, right? After completing your 2 years master's, you get 1 year of OPT, okay, which is optional practical training, right? In that 1 year of OPT, you can essentially apply. You work for a company, right? And at the end of 1 year, so in that 1 year, you get two chances to apply for an H-1B program, right? The H-1B visa is basically like a lottery. There are certain seats, and there are a lot of other students who are applying for those seats, all right? So it's literally a lottery, and you get two chances at it, one at the beginning of your OPT and one at the ending of your OPT, right? So 2 years masters, 1 year of OPT. At the beginning of OPT, you apply for an H-1B, you get it, great. If you don't get it, again at the end of OPT, you get another chance at applying for H-1B. If you get it, you're on the H-1B for about 5 years. You keep getting it renewed after every couple of years, and then beyond that, you essentially can apply for a green card, right? If you do not get the H-1B, you are forced to go back to your home country, right? That is a broad difference. Many people have a workaround, and then they say, okay, can I get to a Canada PR? And many people, instead of coming back to India, then move to Canada from the US and start working there, right? But yeah, that's the harsh reality. Hopefully, with Joe Biden coming in, H-1Bs will become easier to get than they have been in Trump's administration, right? So that's the broad difference between how visas work, right? So US downside is that H-1B is like a lottery, and UK currently needs international students, so they give you, instead of a 1 year optional training, OPT, UK gives you a 2 year post-study work visa. So OPT is like a post-study work visa in the US. You get 1 year in the US versus you get 2 years in the UK, right? And after that, you have to convert that visa into a work visa. And that is done by your company you're working with that sponsors your application to convert it to a work visa. And from that work visa, within 3 to 5 years, you can apply for a PR. That's how both of them operate, right? There are slight differences. In the US, there is a tweak though. If you were to do your master's in a STEM approved course, right? STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. If you were to do your master's in a STEM course, then instead of 1 year, you get a 3 year OPT or a 3 years post-study work visa. So my recommendation would be, if you were to go for your master's, ideally do it in a STEM course. Even if it's an MBA, try and figure out a STEM MBA. So there are MBA with business analytics or some form of analytics involved that gives you a STEM MBA. And that STEM MBA, instead of giving you a 12 months post-study work visa in the form of an OPT, gives you a 36 months OPT, right? So it is basically 12 months OPT that can be extended for another 24 months, right? So you get 36 months of OPT. And so after that 36 months, you get enough chances to get an H-1B as well. So you would likely get an H-1B, higher chances of getting an F-1B with instead of, if you were to just get 1 year OPT. Once you get that H-1B, you are on that H-1B for some time, and then you go on and convert that to a green card, right? So yeah, those are the broad differences between US and UK and international study opportunities there. I hope this was helpful for you all. I would be happy to take any questions. I think Safan, you have asked whether Liverpool University accepts Duolingo. I will have to check back and get on that. Why don't you sort of post us a query on leverageedu.com or give us a call on 1-800-572-000, and we'll be happy to answer that question for you and happy to get you through other schools' applications as well. In UK, what should we give more importance to? A fee difference of 5 to 10,000 GBP or university ranking? That's Harshit's question. It's a very, very interesting question. It depends. So how much, what is the difference in the ranking are we talking about, Harshit? If you can probably just share the kind of universities that you're looking at or comparing between the universities, then probably I would be able to give you a better answer on that. I think, from the perspective of deciding which university you should go to, you should look at their placement statistics and see which university is better, right? If you find that the average placement record, right, the average salary range of folks who have graduated from University X versus University Y, what is the difference between them? And that way you will be able to quantify an ROI for yourself, that if I were to pay that 5 to 10,000 pounds extra at this point of time and get that extra average salary, would that cover up for the extra 5 to 10K you have put in, right? And justify that difference in university ranking. So yeah, if say you're trying to decide between a university, which is like top 10 ranked in the UK versus a top 50 ranked in the university in the UK, I would say go for a top 10 ranked university in the UK and don't worry so much about the extra money. But if the difference in, say, it's a top 20 ranked university and a top 25 ranked university, it might not be that big a difference, right? Rankings also keep fluctuating. It is also a function of which agency has rated that particular university, right? So if it's 10 versus 50, go ahead with the 10 and pay the extra money. But if it's like 10 and 15, it doesn't matter that much. Just a little bit of information for you all. So we go live every day on Leverage TV at 6 p.m. India time and answer a bunch of these questions that a lot of our students ask us. So you can tune in every day 6 p.m. and watch these sessions if you're interested in going to study abroad. And if you do not have the time to watch it or miss any of these sessions at 6 p.m., we always have all these recordings put out on Leverage TV. So log on to leverageedu.com and go to Leverage TV, and you would find all of these recordings over there. And you can watch any of these sessions at any point of time. And the other thing is, if you want to keep getting updates on different questions or different topics about studying abroad, you can join our community on Telegram, on WhatsApp, called Leverage Beyond. So when you join this community, you would keep getting a lot of updates in the form of very interesting articles that we take out, about 6 to 10 of them every day. Plus, you would keep getting updates on our webinars with different universities, as well as Leverage TV sessions every day. So do join our community, and you would keep getting a lot of these updates if you're interested in going to study abroad. So we would wrap up today's Leverage TV session. I had a wonderful time talking to all of you. And in case you have any other questions about wanting to go study abroad, or you need your help with figuring out the right fit university and the right fit course for you, or you want help with application assistance or visa or education loans or university accommodation assistance, don't hesitate. Just hit us up on 1-800-572-000 or log on to leverageedu.com, and we would be more than happy to help you at any time of the day. Thanks a ton. This is Digvijay here. See you next week.